As things begin to wind down from the battle between Ash and Hisui, Silene announces to all that with the battle, Ash will be welcomed into the village with open arms. By most people, at least. As a member of the Survey Corps, Ash now was going to be working alongside the Galaxy Expedition team. They will provide him with anything he may need, so long as he pulls his weight. Ash thanks everyone, and he promises that he's going to do his best. Akari is then tasked with getting Ash acquainted with his new living quarters, and fitted for some clothes at the clothier. The two push through the crowd, and Akari shows Ash to his quarters. She tells him that he will be resting there any time they don't happen to be out on an expedition, and to make himself at home. Pikachu runs around playfully, while Oshawott chooses to go to the nearby water basin, cleaning its scalchop within the waters. Akari acknowledges Oshawott having followed Ash, to which Ash thinks that maybe Oshawott wants to continue traveling with him. He bends down in front of Oshawott, asking if he'd like to join him in his travels, and Oshawott seems to agree. Akari seems a little surprised that a Pokemon would actually be interested in staying with a human, but Ash says it's nothing new to him. He's met multiple Pokemon and made friends with all sorts of ones. Though, unfortunately, some didn't want to be friends. In fact, there was one he fought alongside recently who chose to just leave without another word. He hopes it's doing alright, though. Akari states that Ash sure is an odd person. She hasn't met anyone who truly gets along with a Pokemon. Even those who had Pokemon did so out of necessity. It was a survival tactic, rather than because they wanted to. Ash bends down, scooping Oshawott up, and placing the sea otter on his shoulder. Pikachu then scampers up, taking his usual spot as well. He then states that he could never really see that being the case, though he's met so many people who've thought of Pokemon differently from him, so it isn't too strange to him. Akari thinks for a moment, before shrugging off the difference, stating that Laventon will probably be thrilled to see Ash getting along with Oshawott. They can visit him after Ash is fitted in his new attire. The next stop is to visit a woman by the name of Anth. As the seamstress running the Jubilife clothier, she is the one to handle Ash's Survey Corps clothes. She gets his measurements before beginning work on the handcrafted attire. As she works, Ash can't help but be reminded of his Leaf Annie back home, even mentioning the bug to her. Not even looking away from her work, Anth thinks about the concept of a Pokemon who would spin silken leaves into clothing. If not for how dangerous the creatures around them were, maybe something like that could come in handy for her. She then informs them that it'll be a while before she finishes the outfit, and it will be dropped off at Ash's living quarters the next day. The two thank her for her work, before they head back to the Galaxy Team headquarters. As they're about to head in, they're flagged down by a strange man. His face reminds Ash of a champion he battled not too long ago, and he wonders if they're related in some way. The man introduces himself as Volo, with Akari noting that he works with the Ginkgo Guild, being a merchant by trade. Volo brushes off her words, before asking about Ash. He's clearly fascinated by the idea of a stranger falling from the sky, and wanted to know more. Ash states that there isn't really much to learn, as he's not sure how he got here himself. Everything was still a little fuzzy, and he wasn't even sure what his goal was here. The main thing he remembers is that he needs to seek out the Renegade. The mention of the Renegade makes Volo wince, but it goes mostly unnoticed. The merchant mentions that he has heard of something called a Renegade in the myths of Hisui, though he's not sure how related they are. This does make Ash interested, as he asks for more details. Akari then stops him, saying that while any information would be valuable, They are needing to speak with Professor Laventon, and so she asks that the merchant let them be on their way. Volo allows it, saying that they can discuss with each other at a later time, before the two head into the building. Nearby, an older man calls out to Volo, asking him if he's still on that mythology stuff. If he spent as much time selling their wares as he did looking into that nonsense, then maybe he'd be able to travel on his own. Volo grumbles to himself, before heading over to the cart parked outside the Galaxy Hall. The two enter and Akari leads Ash to Professor Laventon's office. Inside the room, they are met with Rowlet swooping down overhead. Ash finds this rather enjoyable, but Akari can't help but grimace at it. They explain the situation to Laventon, and the professor is thrilled by the idea. He explains that his method of research specializes in the relationship between Pokemon and both their surroundings as well as other organisms. He's been wanting to study how Pokemon interact with humans for some time. Most people within the Galaxy team who use Pokemon don't have a true relationship. They're mostly just a means to an end. However, if there are Pokemon who are interested in cooperating and working together with Ash, then his research can be broadened farther than ever before. Laventon hands over an empty Pokeball, saying that it's the last one from when he assisted in catching the others. Ash takes it, before crouching down in front of Oshawott. He asks the Sea Otter Pokemon if he's sure that he wants to come in with him. Oshawott responds by taking a hold of his Scalchop and holding it up to Ash in a sign of respect. Ash smiles, bumping the Scalchop with his fist. He then opens the Pokeball and captures Oshawott. As this happens, the Cyndaquil in Laventon's office watches in shock. It then looks over to Akari. Suddenly Rowlet swoops down, scaring Cyndaquil into leaving its personal habitat. The more timid mouse runs, hiding behind Akari's legs. This, of course, startles Akari. The girl immediately scolds Cyndaquil, which prompts Ash to defend it, saying that Cyndaquil didn't mean any harm. Rowlet just startled it, that's all. If anything, Cyndaquil feeling safe around her should make her happy. Akari just walks off, stating that she isn't wanting to deal with this right now. Laventon stops her though, stating that they should take the time to celebrate Ash joining them in the Survey Corps. They should get Benny to whip up some of his delicious potato mochi. Akari stops, glancing back. She then lets out a sigh, agreeing to. As she heads off, Laventon tells Ash that Akari wasn't always like this. In fact, she used to be very curious about Pokemon, and was adamant on learning more. However, after one of her survey missions, she started being distant from all Pokemon, and treated them with fear and disdain. With that, the three head over to Benny's. The trio eat, drink, and happily talk, with Ash explaining a few things about himself. He tells them about the different Pokemon he's met, the different regions he's been to, and the Pokemon he's befriended. Laventon states that he's never heard of those places being anything like what Ash just said. It only makes them wonder just what happened to Ash that brought him here. The group tries to see if Ash can remember how he got here, but he says that his memory is still kind of fuzzy. He can't remember much beyond a bright light and a voice. He knows he's supposed to find a Renegade, but doesn't know how just yet. Laventon mentions that Pokemon have been becoming more aggressive lately. Alpha Pokemon have been appearing more and more. It's been a big problem for the Security Corps. There's also been these strange storms appearing on occasion. Ash asks what he's talking about. It's at that point the eavesdropping Volo joins in, saying that they're known as space-time distortions. He and Ginter have had to deal with them while traveling around. black clouds will form, and some sort of purple energy will form below, creating some sort of dome over the land. It's very dangerous to make it through there in a space-time distortion. Laventon adds that many members of the Survey Corps have gotten injured by aggressive Pokemon attacks. Some have said the Pokemon inside have been unlike any seen before. He's wanted to research one, but they're just too dangerous. Volo agrees with him, stating that he's had to learn how to navigate them. Anything can happen inside one, and they just seem to be cropping up more and more. At this point, Akari points out the black clouds already in the sky. Far off, at the peak of a mountain, they can be found. The group watches them swirl and crackle with ominous energy. Laventon mentions how Mount Coronet has been a concern of the commander for quite some time. They've considered sending a research team up there, but no one has ever made it close to the summit as of late. The mention of Mount Coronet confuses Ash, as he stated that the mountain is normally found in the Sinnoh region. The mention of Sinnoh confuses the group, as they state how Sinnoh is what the Diamond and Pearl clans call their respective deities. What region in the world is named after their deity? This gives them all food for thought. They finish eating not long after, and turn in for the night. Laying on his cot, Ash thinks about everything. Jubilife Village, the Galaxy Team, Mount Coronet. All these names were in some way related to the Sinnoh region. But that couldn't be right. This looked nothing like the Sinnoh region. At least, not that he remembered. Though, why did Akari remind him of Dawn? Both Commander Komodo and Captain Silene looked familiar too. In fact, Zissou even reminded him of the Elite Four member Flint. This couldn't just be a coincidence, right? His focus shifts to everyone back home. He hopes they're all doing okay. He wonders how long he'll be away from them. Then he thinks about Gary's words. How much closer is he to becoming a Pokemon Master? He looks to Pikachu, who sleeps soundly beside him. He smiles. Perhaps this portion of his journey can bring him closer. You just have to see. The next morning, Ash wakes up to find his new Survey Corps clothes at his front door. He quickly gets changed before heading to headquarters. As soon as he steps inside, he's called over by Captain Silene. He joins Professor Laventon and Akari as they are debriefed. Silene tells them that they just received a letter from Warden Mai of the Diamond Clan. She requested that they send some Survey Corps members to meet her at the bridge in the Obsidian Fieldlands immediately. Seeing as Ash was new, they figured he would be sent, with Akari accompanying for support. The two would receive more information upon arrival. However, she did state that it had something to do with a pack of alpha Pokemon terrorizing Deer Track Heights. Akari takes a deep breath, before stating that the two will complete this task to the best of their ability. Laventon tells them that he and the Pokemon will see the two of them off, as both Cyndaquil and Rowlet have seemed different after Oshawott officially left them yesterday. The group begins walking towards the gates of the village. Cyndaquil stands close to Akari, but she just ignores the Fire Mouse. Once they're at the gates, Ash and Akari say their goodbyes to Laventon. With that, they're on their way. Once the two are out of view, Laventon decides to head back to headquarters. However, when he asks Rowlet and Cyndaquil to accompany him, Cyndaquil keeps staring out at the path Ash and Akari left on. Then, without warning, the little Fire Mouse runs off down the path. Akari leads Ash to the Obsidian Fieldlands, the area that he originally met her in the other day. As they travel, they come across a group of Shinx that are playing together. Ash treats them kindly and warmly, but Akari immediately makes him get back on the road, acting as though the sooner they get away from them, the better. Ash tries to question her about this, but she completely ignores his queries. After a few hours of walking, the duo arrives on a bridge. On the other side, they find a girl who looks similar to one that Ash met briefly during a Sinnoh journey. Once they cross the bridge, they learn this girl's name is Mai, and she's a member of the Diamond Clan. She was the one who sent the request for help from the Galaxy team, and asked if the two were there to assist. Ash agrees to, though Akari clarifies that Ash is the battler, while she's mostly there as a guide, who will take note of any Pokemon Professor Laventon has not added to his Pokedex already. Mai explains the situation. There's a pack of wild Pokemon, led by an Alpha, whom are terrorizing Deer Track Heights. She tried to handle them with her Munchlax, but they were too strong. However, if something isn't done, then the Stantler population will lose their home. If that wasn't bad enough, the pack had managed to injure the Great Weirdeer. The name Weirdeer is familiar to Ash. He could remember Cynthia mentioning the Pokemon to him, but that memory was still fuzzy, so he couldn't think of the context. Still, he asks about the Great Weirdeer and what it is. Mai is happy to explain, and so regales them with the tale. Long ago, in the ancient times of Hisui, a hero befriended 10 Pokemon. This hero went on to do much for the people of Hisui, that Almighty Sinnoh found him favorable. The 10 Pokemon were blessed, and this blessing was carried down by their descendants. Weirdeer is one of those descendants, as are the noble Pokemon of the areas. Mai then leads them to Deer Track Heights, the three arriving just as a storm rolls in. Ash asks what it is they're up against, but his question is answered soon. Mai has them hide, so they aren't spotted by a group of aggressive-looking Luxio, led by a mighty Luxray with glowing red eyes. Ash looks over and notices Akari beginning to shake uncontrollably. He asks if she is okay, and she tries to brush it off. Mai states that those are the ones Ash must defeat, and so Ash takes charge. He brings out Oshawott and asks his 2 Pokemon if they're ready. The 2 nod, and so Ash rushes out to face his foe. As soon as Ash moves, Luxray notices him. With a roar from the Alpha, the Luxio all pounce. Pikachu and Oshawott begin to fight. They clash with the Luxio, and while they are strong, the pack does have an advantage in numbers. Ash thinks quickly, and has Pikachu and Oshawott work in sync with each other in order to handle these Luxio. But just when he and his Pokemon seem to be getting an advantage, Luxray steps in. As rain begins to fall, the Luxray uses Thunder, which devastates Ash's Pokemon. Oshawott is completely taken out of the battle, while Pikachu is badly damaged. Ash picks up both Pokemon, trying to make sure that they're okay. That's when the pack begins to surround him. Things are getting bad for Ash, and so Mai tells Akari to do something. However, Akari is frozen with fear. She just stares as the pack circle Ash. She won't move. She can't move. The look in Luxray's eyes forbid her from moving. Mai gets up, but her movements only catch the attention of Luxray. All the electric Pokemon ready themselves to attack the group as a whole. Suddenly, a powerful air slash cuts through. When they look up, they find Volo on the back of a Togekiss. He holds out his hand to Ash and saves him from the center of the pack. He then swoops in, taking up Mai and Akari as well. The group flies off, seeking shelter from the rain and the Pokemon. They land with the Volo saying that this should keep them safe for now. He also brings out some of his wares in order to heal Ash's Pokemon. Akari apologizes to them all. She just couldn't do anything. Those Pokemon were too strong. Ash tells her that it's okay. Luxray caught him off guard, and the storm certainly didn't help either. He'll just have to train and get ready for a rematch. Despite the pouring rain, Ash goes out with his Pokemon and begins training. Volo watches him for a moment. He then mutters something to himself. Something about how violence is the immediate resort once again. Akari only barely catches his words, but doesn't think much of them. She then watches as Volo joins Ash in the rain. Akari wonders aloud how Ash and Volo can get along with Pokemon like this. Her words are questioned by Mai, who is still in the shelter with her. Akari states how Pokemon are terrifying creatures. They are savage and beastly. So many people she knows in the survey and security corps have been badly injured by Pokemon. There have also been those who have met far worse fates. Mai then asks if Akari finds her little one to be terrifying. She of course is referring to the Munchlax that has been accompanying her. Akari says that it seems under control for now, but she still will not trust it. Munchlax evolve into the Pokemon Snorlax, and she's seen firsthand just how awful one of those can be when hungry. Luckily, the commander was able to handle that incident. Mai then asks why she would be researching them if she feels that way. And this makes Akari fall silent. Ash works hard with his Pokemon. Pikachu and Oshawott spar in order for the newer member to be brought up to speed. Pikachu is able to avoid anything that Oshawott tries, which begins to get the Sea Otter's nerves. Eventually, Ash notices something very odd about Oshawott. Not once does it ever use its Scowl Chop in battle. He remembers his Oshawott from Unova, who had the Razor Shell attack for quite some time. Yet this one only used Tackle and Aqua Jet. So, he tries to get Oshawott to utilize it. Oshawott begins fighting with Scowl Chop in hand, using it like a knife against Pikachu. And yet Razor Shell doesn't seem to activate. Volo calls out to Ash, telling them that he'll fall ill if he keeps working in the rain like this. Ash calls back, telling them that he just needs to work with Oshawott a little longer. Volo notes Ash's sheer determination, though he argues that it'll only get him in trouble. Still, Ash says he'll work for a while longer, and then they'll take a break. He then gets back to training. Volo then mentions how he's never seen someone train a Pokemon like this. He's met many people, and few have actually thought to train a Pokemon like they train their own body. Ash finds this to be strange, as he's used to Pokemon trainers being very common. He tells Volo that when people and Pokemon work together, they can become so much stronger than they already are. Volo seems to agree to this, as he mentions he managed to catch Pokemon utilizing the Pokeball contraption on his own. This gets Ash's attention, and he asks if Volo wouldn't mind having a battle with him and Oshawott. Volo raises an eyebrow at this, asking if Ash means they'd have their Pokemon duel, like he did with Hisui the other day. Ash nods before explaining that Oshawott battling different types of Pokemon may help him with his training. Volo thinks for a moment, having a strange reaction to the idea, but ultimately, he agrees to act as a sparring partner for Ash and Oshawott. With that, he sends out Garchomp, and the training begins. Mai's Munchlax approaches with a look of curiosity. Akari moves away, making a big reaction that gets everyone's attention. Ash and Volo even stop their training, even though now Oshawott seems to be faring a bit better. Having gotten all this unwanted attention, Akari decides to reveal why she acts this way with Pokemon. The truth is, she really did find Pokemon interesting in the past. Growing up, she was very naive about the concept of whether Pokemon were dangerous or not. She'd approach Pokemon, only for them to lash out. But she didn't care. She never got hurt, so as a little kid, she never thought much of it, even when adults scolded her. Eventually, she became of age to work, and so she enlisted in the Survey Corps. That was when she met Professor Laventon, who also had a curiosity for Pokemon. She became his assistant, and began helping complete the Pokedex to the best of her ability. She even helped take care of Rowlet, Cyndaquil, and Oshawott. However, on one expedition, she ended up running into a pack of Shinx, similar to the Luxio they had just dealt with. Before she could even jot anything down for the professor, she got the business end of a Thundershock. Soon, the entire pack was on top of her. They shocked her, bit her, and clawed at her. She eventually lost consciousness, only to wake up in the medical wing days later. It took weeks for her to fully recover from everything they did to her. Even afterwards, she hasn't been able to see Pokemon any other way. She was foolish, and because of it, she could have died. If it wasn't for the security corps finding her, if anything, that was just a wake-up call. She was finally able to see how truly terrifying Pokemon are. Ash acknowledges how Pokemon can hurt other people, and she apologizes for what happened to Akari. He then mentions Pikachu. When he and Pikachu first started out, Pikachu didn't really like him. He'd shock him, ignore him, run away. Pikachu would do anything to spite him. He'd be a liar if he said Pikachu never hurt him. However, eventually the two of them came to an understanding with each other, and eventually they became best friends. He couldn't think of ever trying to become a Pokemon Master without Pikachu. Mai asks what a Pokemon Master is, to which Ash sighs a little. He mentions how he's honestly not sure anymore. He spent a lot of time battling different trainers, but he's not sure whether that has really helped him. At this point, it feels like he's forgotten what being a Pokemon Master was truly about, especially when a Pokemon he met refused to be friends with him. It's honestly gotten him down for a while. Akari resonates with this slightly, while Volo just turns away. Ash then recollects himself, stating that regardless of the ups and downs, Pikachu has been by his side. They've had disagreements, and they've hurt each other, but at the end of the day, he and Pikachu have stood by each other. He knows that his words probably won't change Akari's mind completely, but if she at least reconsiders the possibility of Pokemon and people being friends, then he'll have done his best. Akari seems uncertain, but then she hears something off in the distance. A cry of terror, and it seems to be coming from around Deer Track Heights. Ash decides he's going to go check it out, while Mai chooses to follow behind. Volo tries to tell Ash that he'll just fall ill, if not die, but Ash exclaims that he can't just sit by while someone's in trouble. When he puts it that way, Volo pulls his hat down, stating how this stuff is inevitable anyway. Still, Volo follows after, leaving Akari alone in the shelter. When they reach Deer Track Heights, they find the pack once again, this time surrounding a bearded deer Pokemon. Mai mentions how that is the mighty Weirdeer, yet none of them are sure it was what they heard earlier. Still, they won't just let Luxray and the rest of the pack harm Weirdeer further. Thus, Ash brings out Oshawott, while Mai and Volo call upon Munchlax and Garchomp. Akari is alone with her thoughts. She shouldn't let someone get hurt. But what was she supposed to do? If they're going to Deer Track Heights, then Alpha Luxray is sure to be there. She remembers how much pain she had to suffer through because of creatures like Pokemon. She can't go through that again. She's too scared. However, she then thinks about the others. They're doing this despite the possibility of getting hurt. They know all too well that they could, and yet they're still going out there. She also thinks more carefully on Ash's words. Becoming friends with Pokemon. Was that truly possible? Was her naivety as a child not completely pointless? She wasn't sure. But the more she thought, the more she felt as though she couldn't just sit idly by and do nothing. So she ran out into the cold night, heading to Deer Track Heights as fast as her legs could carry her. The pack is split, but still strong. Many team up to face the three humans, while the others fight Weirdeer. Despite being split, there's still more of them able to fight the total group. Luxray isn't even included within that group, as it merely watches its underlings doing most of the heavy lifting for it. Their group fighting tactics do give them the edge, even with Volo using a Garchomp. Still, no one gives up just yet. As Oshawott keeps fighting, it begins moving faster and faster as it attacks. Oshawott strikes quicker, and it moves in more lethal ways. Suddenly, a blade of white energy forms, allowing Oshawott to cut with his Scalchop as it moves quickly. Ash recognizes this as a new move, but it's not Razor Shell. Rather, the speed Oshawott has been using to face its opponents has become Aerial Ace. With the new move, Oshawott is able to confound the opponent with its speed as the Scalchop slashes through the Luxio. It's at that moment that the alpha of the pack steps in. It uses Thunder, and Oshawott is immediately sent flying back. Ash is able to catch the otter, but finds it has been paralyzed. Things are looking bad. Akari sneaks up, finding everyone in trouble. Ash's Oshawott has already been defeated, and Alpha Luxray is already making quick work of the others. She notices Weirdeer trying to assist them, but the group of Luxio won't let it through. She then notices something curled up in a ball. It's shaking, and seems very scared. It also feels familiar. Akari then notices some familiar red spots on the bluish ball. Her eyes widen. Leviton Cyndaquil? But how did it get here? Last she saw it, it was saying goodbye to her and Ash. She remembers how close Cyndaquil was trying to get to her, even despite her protests. Had it come all this way just for her? Akari acts on instinct, regardless of her fear. She makes a mad dash for Cyndaquil. This catches the attention of Alpha Luxray, who prepares to use Thunder again. However, Pikachu uses Iron Tail just in time to stop it. Akari manages to rush through, ignoring the attacks of the Luxio. She races to Cyndaquil's side, picking up the Fire Mouse. The Fire Mouse uncurls, looking up to see Akari. She tells the Fire Mouse that it's okay. She's here now. Could have gotten hurt, but she's here for Cyndaquil now. She'll protect it. Some of the Luxio pack begin to charge their Thunder Shocks. However, this time Akari doesn't freeze out of fear. Rather, she turns her back, holding Cyndaquil as close as she can to ensure it won't be damaged. Everyone tries to get over to her, but there's just too many Luxio holding them back. But Akari thinks that it's okay, so long as Cyndaquil is alright. As the attacks are released, Cyndaquil begins to wriggle free from Akari's grab. It heats up its back, making Akari wince as she lets loose of her grip. Akari then watches as Cyndaquil leaps in front of her. Its back flame ignites, before Cyndaquil unleashes a powerful flamethrower against the Luxio pack. With terrible burns now overcoming them, the felines run away from them. Even ones who weren't affected begin to run as they too fear the flames despite the rain. The Alpha Luxray notices this and immediately becomes angrier. However, this gives Ash and Weirdeer a chance to attack. With a combined Psy-Shield Bash and Thunderbolt, Alpha Luxray is defeated and forced to flee. Akari can't believe it. They managed to do it. She then sees Cyndaquil walk up. Bending down to see what it wants, she is pleasantly surprised to see Cyndaquil begin to lick the areas where she felt the heat against. She's unable to understand this. Cyndaquil didn't even use that much heat, and yet just in case it hurt her, Cyndaquil was licking the wounds. Cyndaquil really cared for her. It actually felt bad about the possibility that she was hurt. She was speechless. All she could do was hug the fire moose. Maybe not all Pokemon were so bad. The storm begins to blow over and Ash looks to his partner. Seeing Akari and Cyndaquil made them feel a little nostalgic. Everyone then notices Weirdeer giving them a look. After a brief moment, Ash realizes that Weirdeer wants them to follow it. So they walk with Weirdeer until they get to the top of a rock at Deer Track Heights. At the top, there's a small box. At first, everyone is confused, but eventually Akari is nudged towards the box by Weirdeer. Taking the very subtle hint, Akari approaches the box. Inside, she finds a paper with some faded markings and what looks to be a white flute. Both Volo and Mai are amazed by this revelation, despite Ash and Akari not really knowing what's going on. As Mai begins to explain that it's the Celestica flute, Volo cuts her off, stating the Celestica flute was an item that was thought to be myth at this point. Crafted by Hisui's very first inhabitants, it was one of 2 flutes said to be used by the hero of Hisui. This flute specifically was used to summon 5 of the hero's trusted Pokemon, no matter where he stood. He'd been looking into the stories, but if this one was real, he cuts himself off, choosing to think internally over what this could mean. Mai then mentions to Akari that bearing the Celestica flute is a great honor. It means that Akari had managed to prove herself worthy of these lords of the land. Maybe Weirdeer sensed the potential for her to be Hisui's new hero. Akari looks at the flute in her hand, and the weight of this responsibility begins to set in. After Mai thanks the 2 for their work, she departs, with a mention that she'll be sure to let the Diamond Clan leader know about their good deeds. Ash and Akari decide to camp out for the night, and Volo offers to stick around. After all, he had some supplies to make food and further sleeping. Seeing as he did aid them, the 2 decide to let him stay with them. As Volo prepares some food, Ash does ask him a question. Why did he hold back when he had a Pokemon like Garchomp? Volo brushes this off, saying that he's never been much of a battler. The strength his Pokemon have was merely due to chance encounters, and in order to escape emergency situations. Other than that, he'd never really fought. This seems to be a good enough answer for Ash, so he drops the topic. Once dinner is done and eaten, Ash and Akari decide to get some rest. Volo doesn't go to sleep, though. Rather, he watches the fire crackle for a while. His smile fades, becoming a more grim expression. He mutters to himself that he needs to know more. If this venture led to the revelation of the Celestica flute, then maybe this Ash would lead to more scenarios like it. Ash could still be a threat to his goals, but at the same time, he wasn't worried. After all, he had to deal with what some described to be a devil. Still, if this bargain was going to be fulfilled on both ends, he was going to need to come up with a plan to draw out. He looked at the mountain in the distance. Suddenly, from the clouds over the mountain, a bolt of lightning crashed, striking a tree not too far away. Volo bolts upright, caught off guard by it. However, he then remembers what that tree is home to. Perhaps that will draw out the being he wishes to meet. Perhaps this would be enough to bring out the being known as Arceus. And that's where we'll be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? Do you think this strange adventure will help Ash reach his own goals? How do you feel about Akari's characterization and her ultimate befriending of Cyndaquil? And what do you think Volo is planning? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!